Hello. Okay. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Think and Grow Rich Daily Hangout. My name's Sandy Levesque, and today I'm here with Geraldine in Ireland, who does not say top of the island, top of the morning.
Top of the morning to you.
Do you want to say
I say that to a friend once in a while when I walk. You know, I go walking, I'll see him in the morning. Say, top of the morning to you.
Oh, really? Ah. Well, and as you saw, I'm just here with Glenn as well. So we were just debating whether Irish people actually say top of the morning to you, or if that's just an American cliche in Hollywood. And apparently it is a cliche. So I hope everyone had a great weekend. We've actually we're reading from the chapter on persistence, which is quite funny because Bob Proctor, the big speaker, he shares quite often here. He read this chapter every day for a month at one point with a friend. They did a challenge to themselves, and so this is quite an amazing chapter, really. So we're actually on, and basically what we read on Friday is. I can't actually remember really. I can remember the gist of this chapter. Oh yeah, that basically that when you have persistence, he says it's like what carbon is to steel for people. That it's basically one of the main factors that distinguishes a normal person from a Henry Ford or an Edison or a Carnegie. That you have to have persistence to create a target. And you also need to be able to sort of fuel that persistence, you need to have desire, like an intense desire to do something. And that if you don't really have that, you can use what's in chapter 2 to help you build that, to help build the faith that what you desire can actually happen as well. So would anyone like to read this morning?
I'll read, Sandy, but I want to make sure I'm on the right page or the right point.
Yeah, I think we're on page 141.
141.
Excuse me. And the part about every failure brings with it the seed and of equivalent advantage. Oh, unless I've gone too far.
Oh, I think that's exactly where we left off.
Yeah, the one that's in big, in bold writing.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we'll just repeat that again because that's really true too when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
I always saw the thing by Barbara Corcoran that talked about she took her failures and used them as jewels to move forward, you know.
Yeah.
Everything that brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage. Okay, I'll start there.
Okay.
There are exceptions to this rule. A few people know from experience the soundness of persistence. They are the ones who have not accepted defeat as being anything more than temporary. They are the ones whose desires are so persistently applied that defeat is finally changed into victory. Oh, you know, I forgot to share too. Let me do the share here.
Oh yeah. And hi everyone, we've got quite a lot of people watching, so hi wherever you are in the world. If you want to come onto the Hangout, you're welcome to. Just go to the Facebook group and click on the first link I just posted.
So is it showing on yours?
It is showing now. That's good.
Okay. I'll just start. They are the ones whose desires are so persistently applied that defeat is finally changed into victory. We who stand on the sidelines of life see the overwhelming large numbers who go down in defeat never to rise again. We see the few who take the punishment of defeat as an urge to greater effort. These fortunately never learn to accept life's reverse gear. But what we do not see, what most of us never suspect of existing, is the silent but irresistible power which comes to the rescue of those who fight on in the face of discouragement. If we speak of this power at all, we call it persistence and let it go at that. One thing we all know, if one does not possess persistence, one does not achieve noteworthy success in any calling. As these lines are being written, I look up from my work and I see before me, less than a block away, the great mysterious Broadway, the graveyard of dead hopes and the front porch of opportunity. From all over the world, people have come to Broadway seeking fame, fortune, power, love, or whatever it is that human beings call success. Once in a great while, someone steps out from the long procession of seekers and the world hears that another person has mastered Broadway. But Broadway is not easily nor quickly conquered. She acknowledges talent, recognizes genius, pays off in money only after one has refused to quit. Then we know he or she has discovered the secret of how to conquer Broadway. The secret is always inseparably attached to one word: persistence. The secret is told in the struggle of Fannie Hurst, whose persistence conquered the Great White Way. She came to New York in 1915 to convert writing into riches. The conversion did not come quickly, but it came. For 4 years, Mrs. Hurst learned about the sidewalks of New York from first-hand experience. She spent her days laboring and her nights hoping. When hope grew dim, she did not say, "All right, Broadway, you win." She said, "Very well, Broadway, you may whip some, but not me. I'm going to force you to give up." One publisher, the Saturday Evening Post, sent her 36 rejection slips before she broke the ice and got a story across. The average writer, like the average in other walks of life, would have given up the job when the first rejection slip came. She pounded the pavements for 4 years to the tune of the publisher's no, because she was determined to win. Then came the payoff. The spell had been broken. The unseen guide had tested Fannie Hurst, and she could take it. From that time on, publishers made a beaten path to her door. Money came so fast, she hardly had time to count it. Then the moving picture men discovered her, and money came not in small change, but in floods. The moving picture rights to her latest novel, Great Laughter, brought $100,000, said to be the highest price ever paid for a story before publication. The royalties from the sale of the book probably will run much more. Briefly, you have a description of what persistence is capable of achieving. Fannie Hurst is no exception. Whenever men and women accumulate great riches, you may be sure they first acquire persistence. Broadway will give any beggar a cup of coffee and a sandwich, but it demands persistence of those who go after the big stakes. Kate Smith will say amen when she reads this. For years, she sang without money and without price, before any microphone she could reach. Broadway said to her, "Come and get it, if you can take it." She did it. She did take it until one happy day, Broadway got tired and said, "Oh, what's the use? You don't know when you're whipped, so name your price and go to work in earnest." Miss Smith named her price. It was plenty. Way up in figures, so high that 1 week's salary is far more than most people could make in a whole year. Verily, it pays to be persistent. And here's an encouraging statement which carries with it a suggestion of great significance. Thousands of singers who excel Kate Smith are walking up and down Broadway looking for a break without success. Countless others have come and gone, many of them sang well enough, but they failed to make the grade because they lacked the courage to keep on keeping on until Broadway became tired of turning them away. Persistence is a state of mind, therefore it can be cultivated. Like all states of mind, persistence is based upon definite causes, among them these. Definiteness of purpose. Knowing what one wants is the first and perhaps the most important step towards the development of persistence. A strong motive forces one to surmount many difficulties. Desire. It is comparatively easy to acquire or to maintain persistence in pursuing the object of intense desire. Self-reliance. Belief in one's ability to carry out a plan encourages one to follow the plan through with persistence. Self-reliance can be developed through the principle described in the chapter on autosuggestion. Definiteness of plans. Organized plans, even though they may be weak and entirely impractical, encourage persistence. Accurate knowledge. Knowing that one's plans are sound, based upon experience or observation, encourages persistence. Guessing instead of knowing destroys persistence. Cooperation. Sympathy, understanding, and harmonious cooperation with others tends to develop persistence. Willpower. The habit of concentrating one's thoughts upon the building of plans for the attainment of a definite purpose leads to persistence. Habit. Persistence is the direct result of habit. The mind absorbs and becomes a part of the daily experiences upon which it feeds. Fear, the worst of all enemies, can be effectively cured by forced repetition of courage. Everyone who has seen active service in wars War knows this. Before leaving the subject of persistence, take inventory of yourself and determine in what particular, if any, you are lacking in this essential quality. Measure yourself courageously, point by point, and see how many of the 8 factors of persistence you lack. The analysis may lead to discoveries that will give you a new grip on yourself. Symptoms of lack of persistence. Here you will find the real enemies which stand between you and noteworthy achievement. Here you will find not only the symptoms indicating weakness of persistence, but also the deeply seated subconscious causes of this weakness. Study the list carefully and face yourself squarely if you really wish to know who you are and what you are capable of doing. These are the weaknesses which must be mastered by all who accumulate riches. Failure to recognize and to clearly define what one wants. Procrastination, with or without cause, usually backed up with a formidable array of alibis and excuses. Lack of interest in acquiring specialized knowledge. Indecision, the habit of passing the buck on all occasions instead of facing issues squarely, also backed by alibis. The habit of relying upon alibis instead of creating definite plans for the solution of problems. Self-satisfaction, there is but little remedy for this affliction and no hope for those who suffer from it. Indifference, usually reflected in one's readiness to compromise on all occasions rather than meet opposition and fight it. The habit of blaming others for one's mistakes and accepting unfavorable circumstances as being unavoidable. Weakness of desire due to neglecting the choice of motives that impel action. Willingness, even eagerness to quit at the first sign of defeat based upon one or more of the 6 basic fears. Lack of organized plans placed in writing where they may be analyzed. The habit of neglecting to move on ideas or to grasp opportunity when it presents itself. Wishing instead of willing. The habit of compromising with poverty instead of aiming at riches. General absence of ambition to be, to do, and to own. Searching for all the shortcuts to riches, trying to get without giving a fair equivalent, usually reflected in the habit of gambling, endeavoring to drive sharp bargains. Fear of criticism. Failure to create plans and put them into action because of what other people will think, do, or say. This enemy belongs at the head of the list because it generally exists in one's subconscious mind where its presence is not recognized. See the 6 basic fears in a later chapter. Let us examine some of the symptoms of the fear of criticism. The majority of people permit relatives, friends, and the public at large to so influence them that they cannot live their own lives because they fear criticism. Huge numbers of people make mistakes in marriage, stand by the bargain, and go through life miserable and unhappy because they fear criticism which may follow if they correct the mistake. Anyone who has submitted to this form of fear knows the irreparable damage it does by destroying ambition, self-reliance, and the desire to achieve. Millions of people neglect to acquire belated educations after having left school because they fear criticism. Countless numbers of men and women, both young and old, permit relatives to wreck their lives in the name of duty because they fear criticism. Duty does not require any person to submit to the destruction of his personal ambitions and the right to live his own life in his own way. People refuse to take chances in business because they fear the criticism which may follow if they fail. The fear of criticism in such cases is stronger than their desire for success. Too many people refuse to set high goals for themselves or even neglect selecting a career because they fear the criticism of relatives and friends who may say, "Don't aim so high, people will think you're crazy." When Andrew Carnegie suggested that I devote 20 years to the organization of a philosophy of individual achievement, my first impulse of thought was fear of what people might say. The suggestion set up a goal for me far out of proportion to any that I had ever conceived. As quick as a flash, my mind began to create alibis and excuses, all of them traceable to the inherent fear of criticism. Something inside of me said, "You can't do it, the job is too big, and it requires too much time. What will your relatives think of you? How will you earn a living? No one has ever organized a philosophy of success. What right have you to believe that you can do it? Who are you anyway to aim so high? Remember your humble birth. What do you know about philosophy? People will think you are crazy." And they did. Why hasn't some other person done this before now? These and many other questions flashed into my mind and demanded attention. It seemed as if the whole world had suddenly turned its attention to me with the purpose of ridiculing me into giving up all desire to carry out Mr. Carnegie's suggestion. I had a fine opportunity then and there to kill off ambition before it gained control of me. Later in life, after having analyzed thousands of people, I discovered that most ideas are stillborn and need the breath of life injected into them through definite plans of immediate action. The time to nurse an idea is at the time of its birth. Every minute it lives gives it a better chance of surviving. The fear of criticism is at the bottom of the destruction of most ideas which never reach the planning and action stage. Many people believe that material success is the result of favorable breaks. There is an element of ground for the belief, but those depending entirely upon luck are nearly always disappointed because they overlook another important factor which must be present before one can be sure of success. It is the knowledge with which favorable breaks can be made to order. During the Depression, W.C. Fields, the comedian, lost all his money and found himself without income, without a job, and his means of earning a living. Vaudeville no longer existed. Moreover, he was past 60 when many men considered themselves old. He was so eager to stage a comeback that he offered to work without pay in a new field, movies. In addition to his other troubles, he fell and injured his neck. To many, that would have been the place to give up and quit, but Fields was persistent. He knew that if he carried on, he would get the break sooner or later, and he did get them, but not by chance. Marie Dressler found herself down and out with her money gone, with no job when she was about 60. She too went after the breaks and got them. Her persistence brought an astounding triumph later in life, long beyond the age when most men and women are done with the ambition to achieve. Eddie Cantor lost his money in the 1929 stock crash, but he still had his persistence and his courage. With these, plus 2 prominent eyes, he exploited himself back into an income of $10,000 a week. Verily, if one has persistence, one can get along very well without many other qualities. The only break anyone can afford to rely upon is a self-made break. These come through the application of persistence. The starting point is definiteness of purpose. Examine the first 100 people you meet. Ask them what they want most in life, and 98 of them will not be able to tell you. If you press them for an answer, some will say security, many will say money, few will say happiness, others will say fame and power, and still others will say social recognition, ease in living, ability to sing, dance, or write. But none of them will be able to define these terms or give the slightest indication of a plan by which they hope to obtain these vaguely expressed wishes. Riches do not respond to wishes. They respond only to definite plans, backed by definite desires, through constant persistence.
Cool, thank you, Glenn. That's great.
Okay.
Yeah, we can stop there for now.
Okay.
Wow, there's so much in what we just read that I'm like, where do we start? It's amazing. I love this chapter because every time I hear it or read it, it just really inspires me. You know, because sometimes it can feel like, you know, you do wonder why things are taking long or if things will ever work. And those stories, you know, of the Broadway writer, the woman who 36 rejection slips and 4 years until she got a break. Can you imagine if she had stopped after a year? I bet she had a lot of thoughts in her mind, or even from other people telling her she should stop, that it was a waste of time, that it was never going to go anywhere. But she carried on.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, I remember the story about the gold mine, right? About being three feet from a vein of gold, and then selling all your equipment, right? And missing by just that little extra bit of persistence, right? I mean.
Yeah, exactly. And it also a modern day example that I know of, the writer of Game of Thrones, the TV show that's become really popular. Even here in Portugal, they had like a festival, and there was a stand of Game of Thrones memorabilia translated into Portuguese. But the writer of that, George Martin, he was a teacher, and he was hardly finding any time to write. And then one of his friends won an award for best new writer in his 40s, because he had just published a good book, and he died like a week later of a heart attack.
Oh.
And George thought, oh my God, you know, I should start writing, because that could happen to me, and how stupid that I'm a writer and I'm not writing. So he began writing, and one of his books was rejected 42 times. He just kept sending it out, and eventually got accepted. And then, you know, that wasn't Game of Thrones. That came a bit later on, but you know, it's
Yeah, that's interesting about the fact that his friend died, and then that pushed him through. It pushed him through. And they say that when major things happen in your life like that, when you lose a dear friend, like I lost my brother or whatever, then your brain creates new neural pathways.
right.
And then so that sometimes that becomes a motivator for you to open up, right? To open up to things like Think and Grow Rich or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he felt like he was just waiting until some point in the future. It's kind of like what Napoleon's saying at the end of the chapter. You know, he says if you ask people what they would like, and they'll say, I would like to sing and dance and have money, but they don't have any actual plans, and they're not doing anything. And he realized that he was just kind of waiting until he was, you know, going to have time to write.
Yeah.
But he realized that his job took up so much mental energy teaching that he was kidding himself, that he wasn't going to. He would write a bit at Christmas, and that was it. So he actually quit his teaching job and took a gamble and started to write. And like he said, he was willing to be homeless if that was what it took. It's really inspiring. Now he's, you know, you know, especially with Game of Thrones, he's one of the most successful science fiction writers ever. Yeah. Did anything else come to you guys when we were reading this? Any other like examples you know of? Or?
Well, I think it's definitely a challenge to, again, you know, each time you read this book, it's a challenge for you, again, to re-examine your objectives, right, and to look at whether or not you are persistent, right, persistent.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a great inventory he gives in there of areas to look for weaknesses, you know. I think it's...
Yeah. I'm just going back to that in the book. Yeah, the failure to recognize what you want, procrastination. It's kind of what he was saying before. I think it's quite clever what he does. He basically, like, he starts to, he drums it in, you know, like repetitive.
Yes. Yeah, and that's cellular too, right? That's cellular, you know, that's driving it into your thinking. You know, very strong in your thinking, you know. I think
exactly. Wishing instead of willing. What he said about the habit of compromising of poverty instead of aiming at riches. And he said something else that about how people make targets that are too small. I was just reading a book called The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. It's this kind of success book, and it's amazing. The guy is like he's you just have to kind of hear him. He talks really fast. He's got a lot of energy, and he just is like this warrior that will do whatever it takes to get what he wants. And his book is all about how most people don't really take much action and don't see many results, and that you can actually just go take a lot of action and start to really stand out, because so many people don't. And he says a big problem is people set targets that are way too small. They set realistic targets. He said actually how a target works is that if you set it at a realistic level, generally people don't always hit the actual target. Often they don't. So if you're setting it at a realistic level, you're actually setting yourself up to fall even lower than realistic. And he's always says, whatever your target is, increase it by 10 times, even if it's scary, because you will find that you're more invigorated, you're more enthused about it than if it was just like a realistic target. And it will it takes the same amount of energy to create, for example, $1 million. He talks a lot about creating money than it does to create $10,000. And he says the difference is the thinking. It's just literally your thinking. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I think also he said that if you don't um, if you don't set the right objective there, then you probably don't have the right desire underlying or the right fire right under that.
Mm,
Right. In other words, by setting something that's not something you can do, but something that you think you can't do, right? By setting a little
yeah,
higher, right? Then you're reaching, right? You're pushing that desire a little deeper into yourself.
yeah. And
And
it's
then
more exciting, I found, because it like whatever, because this can apply to a work objective, it could be a financial objective. It just is more, it's just sexier, to like,
yeah,
I remember when I was campaigning, we could have campaigned for like a really low target, which is what a lot of people suggested we do, and we decided to change the law.
yeah,
People thought we were a
yeah,
bit crazy because it was
yeah.
like this tiny campaign group, no
You can't
money.
do that, right? You can't do that, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
and it was way more exciting to work towards that than to say, let's try and get licenses changed by local councils or whatever it was. We were like, no, we want the government to change this at a national level. We want this to be a law change, even if it takes longer, even if it's going to be harder. That's what we went for, and I think it's true with financial stuff as well. Like if your target is just something that will just about let you get by at a slightly better level than what you're at now, it's just not really exciting because
no.
it won't change your life. It will just
And
kind of
right, it's not sexy enough, which means
yeah
you're transmuting that, right? You're transmuting that
yeah
sexual energy, so to speak.
exactly. Whereas
Yeah,
when you know that your target could completely transform your everyday living arrangements or whatever, it
right.
it and and have like other impacts as well. It's just more inspiring. You have more motivation. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's important to really understand all the little inner workings of persistence as he outlines them in this stuff we just read.
Yeah.
To really understand all the little innards of it. The innards.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because he says at the end, it basically boils down to having uh, having definite plans with definite desires and constant persistence.
Some persistence. Yeah.
And I think sometimes people can hear that and think, oh, that sounds so like almost a bit boring, like
Yeah.
your life would become this constant grind towards something. But I think that's not really the point. It's like it doesn't have to be like that. Some people probably do experience it like that. I think it can be, from what I've seen and what got me inspired more and more with this book, was to realize that it's just actually a case of having a target that's going to transform your life. And you know, for me as well, I know that if I do that, it will help me create what I want to create in the world. And then, and you know that you have certain actions that will help you do that. And then you're just like, well, why would I not do this? Because if I don't do this, I'm basically I'm copying out of what I truly
You're
wish to do.
shortchanging yourself. You're shortchanging yourself if you don't do it.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
shortchanging yourself. And that's not why you came here. You didn't come here to do that. To
Yeah, exactly.
so
And it just becomes a way of I find it just gives you more like a more drive and more um, trust that things are going to go the way you want because you're being persistent and you're not giving up on yourself. So
mhm.
to me, it's not a case of like grinding it out till you get to something. It's a case of realizing you can do something and just not giving up until you get it.
Well, it's interesting because I had an awareness this morning, and I think it might be relevant. But I got up and I had a big to-do list, and I realized my head was just feeling really overwhelmed and confused. And then I kind of remembered that I had given priority to joy in my life, and when I just get up and I get into this thing, oh, I must be persistent, I must. But if it's not coming from something that's really truly me, that if it's not coming from that joy, then it just feels kind of empty or something. So
Mm.
I found that interesting. Just I had to really be aware of
Oh no, the sound cut.
kind of, yeah,
But I,
and
I
it
think I understand what Geraldine was saying there too about if it didn't come from within, from her own joy, right? Then, then, um, then you lose what you're heading, what you're aiming for, right? You know, I think, right? I think she was trying to get to that, you know.
Yeah, because your sound cut a bit, Geraldine, at the end. Just the last sentence. What was the last sentence you said? Do you mind repeating it?
I can't remember. Sorry, I can't.
Oh, well, what I heard was you were saying, like what Glenn just said actually, that if it doesn't come from joy, from your joy, that's when it can feel a bit empty and a bit like, I guess, that kind of grinding feeling, you know, like you're
Yeah,
doing. So I think that's a really good awareness, that to make sure that what you're doing is what you really want to create. You know, like sometimes we I remember once I started to rent a dance center for my dance classes, and I couldn't put myself into the work really. I wasn't that excited about it. And one day I realized, oh my God, I don't really enjoy having my own center. I like being mobile, moving from place to place. This is not really my reality. This is someone else's.
yeah.
Because it's
So
kind
that was telling. That was very telling, right?
yeah, it's kind of the dream for many instructors to have your own building and your own physical location. But once I had it, I realized, oh, this isn't actually this isn't my joy, like you're saying, Geraldine. And it was a really amazing awareness, because I was like, wow, I was sure I wanted this. Um, and so, yeah, that's a good point. Make sure that what your target is really what you would like and comes from your joy, your energy. Is that like what you're saying, Geraldine?
Yeah, like that it has to be congruent with what you're like, be in alignment with who you are, and it doesn't get just about being. It's not just about getting money, you know, because sometimes I can think there's too much focus on money when you get into that thing of being persistent. That it actually has to bring you joy, because that's what makes life really abundant and rich, you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I
Mm.
think that's where persistence can actually bring that joy, because it's like you start to see your progress, you know, you start to see things coming together. It's almost like you plant a lemon tree, and it's just a seed in the beginning, and then you keep watering it, you keep
Such a,
checking that the soil is okay, and then you protect it in the winter, and then it starts to grow, and it becomes like a tree, and it has lemons and stuff, and it's like watching something take blossom and and start to reap fruits. Not just money, it could be anything, you know, like just, do you know what I mean? Like that feeling of something growing,
yeah.
and that's where persistence can help with that, I think, because you have that sense that it's really going somewhere.
Yeah.
Cool,
Mm.
cool guys. Well, great to see you both.
Yeah. Today is Labor Day in the U.S., you know.
Ah, so it's today. Okay. Ah,
They have a
yeah.
day like that in Portugal, you know,
Not
or
today,
Ireland.
no. We do have it in England. They have bank holidays, which are always on Mondays.
Uh,
Um, I'm not sure there's anything going on today. That's a good point. I don't think so. Is there anything in Ireland, Geraldine?
No, no.
today.
No. Huh.
Today in Canada and the U.S. It's Labor Day, you know. So
Ah, Canada as well. Ah. Oh, cool. Well, maybe that's why we had more viewers from America than last week, because
oh, possibly. Yeah.
people are off work. Hi, everyone who's watching. Cool. Okay. Well, oh, I was just going to share one last thing. I was like, what was it I remembered that I wanted to share and it's gone? It was this one example, actually, of the time of what Geraldine's saying, just really quickly. It's from Bob Proctor's book, You Were Born Rich, and he's talking about persistence, and he gives a story of this guy that met him and said, look, I want to do what you do. And Bob said to him, you know, it's quite difficult to make a living being a speaker, because it takes a lot of experience and building up contacts, and everyone wants to do it, but a lot of people don't really have the persistence to make it. And this guy was like, I'm going to do it. And he followed Bob around for like 10 years, went to all his seminars, read everything he could, learned everything he could, and eventually he started to like open and close Bob's seminars, then give his own seminars, and then he became very well known and did really well. And so it was like that persistence that he kept going. He could see that he was like, you know, it was like that lemon tree starting to grow. Like he was being asked to come and speak at places, and Bob would start asking him to come and open and finish the seminars, and he could, you know, it's that sense of, yeah, I'm mastering this, I'm getting really good at this, and I'm enjoying this more.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty, that persistence doesn't have to be a boring, monotonous thing. I think it's actually, I guess is my point, it can actually be the beautiful unfolding of something.
Yeah, yeah, the unfolding, yes. And I think when you set a 10x dream, like you were saying, Sandy,
10x rule.
that yeah, or whatever that is, you know, 10 times whatever you thought you could do, right? When you do that, then how it unfolds is the fun part of it, because
exactly.
you don't know, you do not know.
Yeah, you can't predict it.
Yeah,
And
you
it's
don't
not
know.
the
But
universe.
that's
Yeah,
what creates the fun part of it, you know.
exactly.
Cool.
Cool. Cool. Well, I hope this has inspired everyone to be persistent, or continue being persistent if you already are, and to have a burning desire for whatever it is that you'd really like to create, with joy as well. So, thank you for that part, Geraldine.
Thank
Have
you,
a
Joe.
great day, everyone. Mm.
Yeah, have a good
Everybody have
day.
a great
Happy
day.
Labor Day.
Yeah, happy Labor Day, Americans. You Yanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.